They thought she was weak. They thought she was just another discarded trophy wife, pregnant and penniless, begging for scraps. When Tiffany, the mistress clad in designer silk, laughed and kicked the pregnant Julianne right in the shin inside the crowded courtroom aisle, the millionaire husband, Nathaniel, didn't even flinch. He just smirked, checking his Rolex, confident that his high-priced lawyers would crush the weeping woman. But they made one fatal calculation. They didn't check the docket. They didn't know that the honorable justice presiding over their case wasn't just a judge. He was the father Julianne had walked away from 10 years ago, and he had just seen everything. The fluorescent lights of the deceptive calm inside the New York City family court hallway buzzed like a dying fly. Julianne Bennett sat on a hard wooden bench, her hands resting protectively over her 7-month baby bump. Her ankles were swollen, throbbing in rhythm with the headache that had settled behind her eyes 3 days ago and refused to leave. She wore a simple, slightly frayed maternity dress she had bought from a thrift store. It was a stark contrast to the life she had led just 6 months prior. Back then, she was Mrs. Nathaniel Bennett, wife of the tech mogul whose software, Nebula Stream, had just gone public. Now, she was just Julianne. No lawyers, no assets, and seemingly no hope. "You look terrible, darling," a voice dripped with saccharine poison. Julianne didn't need to look up to know who it was. The scent of Chanel No. 5, mixed with an underlying odor of stale cigarettes, announced her arrival. Tiffany St. Clair, the woman who had started as Nathaniel's executive assistant and ended up as the reason Julianne was sleeping on a friend's couch. Julianne raised her head slowly. Tiffany stood there, looming over her. She was undeniably beautiful in a predatory way, wearing a cream-colored pantsuit that probably cost more than Julianne's current net worth. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a severe, sleek ponytail. "Go away, Tiffany," Julianne whispered, her voice hoarse. "This is a court hearing. Can't you have some dignity?" "Dignity?" Tiffany laughed, a sharp, barking sound that drew glances from a nervous couple down the hall. "Dignity is for people who can afford retainers, sweetie. Nathaniel tells me you're representing yourself today." "That's tragic." "Really?" Behind Tiffany, Nathaniel approached. He was on his phone, looking annoyed. He wore a navy bespoke suit, the kind that made him look authoritative and trustworthy, a costume he wore well. He barely glanced at his pregnant wife. "Nat," Tiffany cooed, looping her arm through his. "Look at her. She's trying the sympathy-poverty look. Do you think the judge will buy it?" Nathaniel finally looked at Julianne. His eyes were cold, devoid of the warmth that had been there when they exchanged vows 4 years ago. Money hadn't just changed him. It had erased him. "Julianne," he said, his tone clipped. "My lawyer, Mr. Sterling, offered you a settlement. $10,000 and a clean break. You should have taken it. Now you're going to get nothing. I'll make sure you don't even get custody. I can provide for the child. You can't." "He's our child, Nathaniel," Julianne said, her voice trembling with a mix of hormones and rage. "And $10,000, that doesn't even cover the medical bills for the birth. You froze our joint accounts. You kicked me out of our home." "My home," Nathaniel corrected. "Premarital asset. My lawyers were very thorough. You're heartless," Julianne spat. "And you're pathetic," Tiffany interjected, stepping closer, encroaching on Julianne's personal space. "Face it, you were a placeholder. I'm the upgrade. And soon, I'll be the mother that baby actually looks up to." The cruelty of the statement took the air out of Julianne's lungs. She tried to stand up, needing to get away from the toxicity, but her balance was off due to the pregnancy. She stumbled slightly as she rose. Tiffany, seeing an opportunity to be cruel under the guise of an accident, stuck her foot out. It wasn't a trip. It was a calculated sharp kick to Julianne's shin, right where the bone was most tender. "Oops," Tiffany sneered. The pain was sharp and immediate. Julianne gasped, her leg buckling. She fell hard back onto the bench, jarring her spine. A sharp pain shot through her abdomen, causing her to cry out in panic, clutching her stomach. "My baby!" Julianne wheezed, eyes wide with terror. "Oh, get up!" Tiffany scoffed, looking down at her with disgust. "Stop being so dramatic. I barely touched you." Nathaniel looked at his watch, ignoring his wife's distress. "Tiffany, stop playing with her. The bailiff is opening the doors. Let's go inside and end this." They turned their backs on her. Neither of them noticed the tall, broad-shouldered man in the black robe standing in the shadow of the doorway of courtroom 4B. He had been about to enter his chambers through the side door, but had stopped when he heard the commotion. He had seen the kick, he had seen the smirk, and he had seen the tears of the pregnant woman. His hands, aged but powerful, clenched into fists inside the pockets of his robe. He adjusted his glasses, his jaw set in a line of granite. He didn't recognize the woman on the bench immediately. It had been 10 years, and she looked so different, so broken. But he recognized the cruelty. The courtroom was freezing, a stark contrast to the humid New York summer outside. It smelled of floor wax and old paper. Julianne limped to the defendant's table, her shin throbbing with a dull, persistent ache. She placed her hands on the table to steady herself, taking deep breaths to calm the baby, who was kicking anxiously, perhaps sensing her distress. On the other side of the aisle, Nathaniel sat relaxed, flanked by 2 high-powered attorneys from the firm Cromwell and Baines. Tiffany sat in the gallery directly behind him, scrolling on her phone, looking bored. "All rise," the bailiff bellowed, his voice booming off the mahogany walls. "The Honourable Justice William Harrison, presiding." Julianne froze, her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. Harrison. It couldn't be. There were hundreds of judges in the state. Harrison was a common name. She hadn't spoken to her father, William Harrison, since she was 22. Since the day she dropped out of law school to pursue art, a decision he called foolish and a waste of intellect. The argument had been explosive. He was a hard man, a man of rules and statutes, a man who didn't understand grey areas. She had left home, changed her number, and eventually married Nathaniel, never telling him about her prominent family, because she wanted to be loved for herself, not her father's influence. The door to the judge's chambers opened. The man who walked out was older than she remembered. His hair, once steel grey, was now snowy white. His shoulders were slightly stooped, but he moved with the same terrifying, silent authority that used to silence a dinner table with a single look. It was him. Julianne instinctively lowered her head, letting her hair fall like a curtain to hide her face. She was ashamed. She was the pregnant, soon-to-be divorced failure he had predicted she would become. She couldn't bear for him to see her like this. Judge Harrison ascended the bench and sat down. He arranged his files with meticulous precision. He didn't look at the plaintiffs or the defendant yet. He took a sip of water. "Docket number 4492, the clerk announced. Nathaniel Bennett versus Julianne Bennett. Divorce, division of assets, and custody hearing." "Ready for the plaintiff, Your Honor," Nathaniel's lead lawyer, a man named Arthur Sterling. No, Arthur Drake, she corrected herself, remembering the names she despised, stood up. Arthur Drake was known as the Shark in city circles. "Ready for the defendant," Julianne whispered, her voice barely audible. Judge Harrison looked up, His eyes, sharp and blue behind rimless spectacles, scanned the room. He looked at Nathaniel, sitting smugly. He looked at Tiffany in the back, who was popping gum. And then his gaze landed on Julianne. He paused. The silence in the courtroom stretched, becoming heavy and suffocating. Judge Harrison stared at the top of Julianne's head. He looked at the curve of her stomach, visible even as she slumped. He looked at the way she gripped the table, her knuckles white. "The defendant is representing herself?" Judge Harrison asked. His voice was gravelly, deep, and unreadable. "Yes, Your Honor," Julianne said, forcing herself to look up. She met his eyes. For a second, the mask slipped. William Harrison's eyes widened a fraction. His lips parted slightly. The color drained from his face. He looked from her face to her stomach, and then to the bruise already forming on her shin, the bruise he had watched her receive in the hallway. He looked back at Nathaniel. The look wasn't judicial anymore. It was predatory. "Very well," Judge Harrison said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming dangerously quiet. "Mr. Drake, you may proceed with your opening statement, and I suggest you make it compelling." Arthur Drake adjusted his tie, sensing nothing amiss. He thought he had a friendly audience. Wealthy men usually stuck together. "Thank you, Your Honor," Drake began, pacing the floor. "We are here today to dissolve a marriage that was, frankly, built on deception. My client, Mr. Bennett, is a self-made man. He built Nebula Stream from the ground up. Ms. Bennett contributed nothing to this success. Furthermore, due to her erratic behavior and financial instability, we are petitioning for full custody of the unborn child immediately upon birth and a nullification of any alimony claims." "Erratic behavior?" Judge Harrison interrupted. He didn't look at the lawyer. He was staring straight at Nathaniel. "Yes, Your Honor," Drake smiled smoothly. "Ms. Bennett is emotional, unstable. We have witnesses who can testify to her outbursts." "Is that so?" The judge leaned back in his leather chair, steepling his fingers. "And Mr. Bennett? He is the picture of stability? A moral compass?" "Absolutely, Your Honor. He is a pillar of the community." "Interesting," the judge murmured. He picked up a pen and tapped it rhythmically on the desk. Tap, tap, tap. "Tell me, Mr. Bennett," the judge addressed Nathaniel directly, bypassing the lawyer. "Do you believe that a man's character is defined by how he treats those who can do nothing for him?" Nathaniel blinked, surprised to be addressed so early. He stood up, buttoning his jacket. I suppose so, Your Honor. I give to charity annually." "Charity?" The judge repeated the word as if it tasted sour. "Sit down, Mr. Bennett." Judge Harrison turned his gaze to Julianne. "Ms. Bennett, you are claiming financial duress?" "Yes, sir," Julianne said, her voice shaking. "He cut off my credit cards. He changed the locks. I have nowhere to go." "Objection," Drake shouted. "Relevance, we are discussing the prenuptial agreement." "Overruled," Harrison snapped, the sound like a whip crack. "I will determine what is relevant in my courtroom, counselor. Sit down." The violence of the command stunned the room. Arthur Drake sat down slowly, exchanging a confused look with Nathaniel. "Ms. Bennett," the judge continued, his voice softening slightly, though his eyes remained hard flint. "Is it true that you have no family to support you?" Julianne felt tears prick her eyes. "My mother passed away years ago. And my father. We are estranged. It was my fault. I left. I didn't want to be a burden." "A burden," Harrison repeated softly. He took off his glasses and cleaned them slowly. "Sometimes, parents wait a lifetime for their children to return. Sometimes, the estrangement is a sentence the parent serves, not the child." He put his glasses back on. The moment of vulnerability vanished, replaced by cold steel. "We will proceed with the evidence," Judge Harrison declared. "But first, I want to address a procedural matter regarding conduct within the courthouse." Nathaniel whispered to his lawyer. "What is he talking about?" "Mr. Bennett," the judge said, his voice booming. "Is there someone accompanying you today?" Ms. Tiffany St. Clair." Tiffany froze in the back row. She slowly stood up. "I'm here." "Approach the bench," the judge ordered. Tiffany walked up the aisle, her heels clicking loudly. She smirked at Julianne as she passed. She stopped next to Nathaniel, looking up at the judge with a bored expression. "Yes?" "I understand you are Mr. Bennett's partner?" "Fiancé, actually," Tiffany corrected, flashing a diamond ring that caught the courtroom light. "Fiancé," the judge noted. "While he is still married, I see." He looked down at his papers. "And do you make a habit of physically assaulting pregnant women in the hallways of the Hall of Justice?" The silence in the room was absolute. You could hear the hum of the air conditioning. Nathaniel's face went pale. "Your Honor, "Quiet," Harrison roared. He stood up, towering over the bench. "I am asking Ms. St. Clair, did you, or did you not, kick the defendant less than 20 minutes ago while she was attempting to stand?" Tiffany's confidence faltered. She looked around nervously. I tripped. It was an accident. She's lying." "She hasn't said a word about it," Judge Harrison said icily. "I saw it." Tiffany's mouth dropped open. You saw it?" "My chambers have a side exit. I was standing in the doorway. I saw you mock her poverty. I saw you kick a woman carrying a child. And I saw you, Mr. Bennett." He turned his burning gaze to Nathaniel. "Check your watch while your wife cried in pain." "Your Honor, this is highly irregular," Drake stammered, standing up. "If you are a witness, you must recuse yourself." "Oh, I will recuse myself, Counselor," Judge Harrison said, a dark smile playing on his lips. "But not before I issue a bench warrant for Ms. St. Clair's immediate arrest for assault and battery within a judicial facility. Bailiff!" The bailiff moved instantly. He grabbed Tiffany's arm. "What? No! Get off me! Nathaniel, do something!" Tiffany shrieked as the handcuffs clicked around her wrists. "And as for you, Mr. Bennett," the judge continued, his voice trembling with suppressed rage, "you are clearly unfit to make decisions regarding the welfare of a vulnerable spouse. I am issuing an emergency temporary order, freezing all of your personal and business assets pending a full financial audit. You won't be able to buy a pack of gum until I say so." "You can't do that!" Nathaniel shouted, losing his cool. "Do you know who I am? I am Nathaniel Bennett. I am worth millions. Who do you think you are?" Judge Harrison leaned forward, his face inches from the microphone. "Who am I?" he whispered, but the microphone carried it to every corner of the room. "I am the man who is going to ensure justice is served. And for the record, Mr. Bennett, I am the grandfather of the child you just tried to discard." The gavel bang that followed Judge Harrison's declaration felt less like a judicial closing and more like a gunshot starting a war. The courtroom erupted. Reporters who had been dozing in the back, waiting for a high-profile drug case, suddenly scrambled for their phones. This was gold. Tech mogul's wife is daughter of presiding judge. Mistress arrested. It was the kind of scandal that ended careers. Nathaniel Bennett stood frozen, his mouth agape, looking between the empty doorway where Tiffany had been dragged out screaming, and the man on the bench who was currently glaring at him with the intensity of a sniper. "Grandfather," Nathaniel stammered, his charm circuit malfunctioning. "Your Honor, I had no idea. If I had known Julianne was your daughter, I would have—" "You would have what?" William Harrison cut in, his voice dangerously low. "Treated her with basic human decency?" Is respect a commodity you only dispense to those with powerful connections, Mr. Bennet? No, I mean, we can settle this, Nathaniel said, putting on his best boardroom smile, though sweat beaded on his forehead. Family settles things privately. There's no need for asset freezes or audits. I'm sure we can come to an amicable agreement. I'm a reasonable man. You are a shark who just swam into a boat propeller, William said, standing up and gathering his robe. This court is in recess. The bailiff will escort Miss Bennet to my chambers. Mr. Bennet, you and your counsel are dismissed. And if you attempt to access any offshore accounts, I will have you held in contempt so fast your head will spin. As Nathaniel was ushered out by a pale-faced Arthur Drake, he shot a look of pure venom at Julianne. It wasn't regret, it was calculation. He was already planning his counter-move. Julianne sat frozen at the defendant's table. She couldn't move. Her legs felt like lead. The adrenaline that had sustained her through the attack in the hallway was fading, replaced by a bone-deep exhaustion. Miss Bennet? The bailiff, a kindly older man named George, offered her a hand. The judge is waiting for you. Julianne nodded mutely. She grabbed her worn tote bag and limped toward the heavy oak door, leading to the inner sanctum of the courthouse. The chambers were exactly as she remembered her father's home office being, smelling of leather, old books, and peppermint tea. William Harrison was standing by the window, looking out at the grey skyline of New York City. He had removed his robe, revealing a crisp white shirt and suspenders. He looked smaller without the robe, more human. He turned when the door clicked shut. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was thick with 10 years of missed birthdays, unanswered letters, and stubborn pride. Your shin, William said finally, pointing to her leg. Do you need a medic? I'm fine, Julianne lied. She wasn't. It throbbed violently. It's just a bruise. William walked over to his desk and pressed a button on his intercom. Martha, get an ice pack and the first aid kit. Now. He sat on the edge of his massive mahogany desk, crossing his arms. He looked at her belly. 7 months? 8, Julianne corrected softly. He's big for his age. William's eyes misted over. He looked away, blinking rapidly. The iron judge, the terror of the family court, was fighting back tears. A boy. I have a grandson. Yes. Why didn't you call, Jules? The old nickname slipped out, cracking the tension. I tracked you for the first 2 years. I knew you were waiting tables in Brooklyn. I knew you got into that graphic design program. I was waiting for you to come home. Then you met him. The tech genius. You disappeared into his world. I thought you were happy. I saw the photos in the magazines. You looked radiant. It was a lie, Julianne whispered, sinking into the leather guest chair. It was all a performance. Nathaniel liked having a trophy. He liked that I was nobody. He liked that I had no connections, no one to run to. It made me easy to control. If I had told him I was a Harrison, maybe it would have been different. But I wanted him to love me for me. And when he showed his true colors, William asked, his voice hardening, when he threw you out? Why didn't you come to me then? Shame, she admitted, looking down at her hands. You told me not to marry him. You didn't say it about Nathaniel specifically, but you warned me about men who love themselves more than they could ever love a partner. You told me I was making a mistake leaving law school. I didn't want to show up on your doorstep, pregnant and broke, proving you right. I wanted to fix it myself. William moved faster than a man of 70 should be able to. He crossed the room and knelt in front of her chair, taking her cold hands in his. Julianne, he said fiercely, I don't care about being right. I care about my daughter. I have spent the last 6 months having nightmares that something had happened to you because I stopped seeing your name in the social columns. I thought you had moved to Europe. To see you today, to see that woman hurt you." His hands shook. "I will destroy him." "Dad, you can't," Julianne said, fear creeping back into her voice. "He has lawyers. He has millions. He'll say you're biased. He'll get a mistrial. He already threatened to take the baby." William stood up, a dark resolve settling over his features. He walked back to his desk and picked up a file. "I know the law better than Nathaniel Bennett knows his coding algorithms," William said calmly. "I have already recused myself from the case. The paperwork was filed 5 minutes ago. Your case is being reassigned to Judge Patricia Thorne." Julianne gasped. "Thorne? The Ice Queen? She hates women. She's famous for siding with high-income earners." "Patricia owes me a favor," William said enigmatically. "But more importantly, Patricia hates bullies, and she hates disrespect in her courtroom. Nathaniel's little stunt with his mistress today? That's already in the record. But we aren't relying on Patricia." William picked up his phone. He dialed a number, putting it on speaker. "Who are you calling?" "You need a lawyer. You can't represent yourself, Jules. Not against Cromwell and Baines." "I can't afford a lawyer, Dad." Nathaniel froze everything. "You have me," William said firmly, "and I am hiring the only man in this city who scares Arthur Drake." The phone rang twice before a deep, smooth voice answered. "William? I thought you were on the bench." "I was," William said. "I need you, Jeremiah. Immediate retainer. Blank check." There was a pause on the other end. "Who is the client?" "My daughter. And the opponent is Nathaniel Bennett." A low whistle came through the speaker. "The Nebula Stream guy? I saw the stock ticker this morning. He's the golden boy." "He's a dead man walking," William corrected. "He abused her, Jeremiah. Financial abuse. Emotional abuse. And his mistress assaulted her in my courthouse. I want you to bury him." "I'm on my way," the voice said. "Tell Julianne to don't sign anything. Don't say anything. And for God's sake, don't answer her phone." William hung up and looked at his daughter. "Jeremiah Stone is coming. You're safe now, Jules." For the first time in 6 months, the knot of terror in Julianne's chest loosened slightly. She leaned back in the chair and closed her eyes, letting the tears finally fall. While Julianne was drinking hot tea in the judge's chambers, Nathaniel Bennett was in the back of his Maybach, screaming into his phone. "What do you mean the accounts are locked? All of them? Even the Cayman shell?" "Sir," his personal banker's voice trembled. "It's a judicial freeze order level 5. It's usually reserved for terrorists or major racketeering charges. The IRS has been flagged. The SEC has been flagged. If we try to move a cent, we go to federal prison. You can't even use your credit cards." "This is insane!" Nathaniel hurled the phone against the leather seat. It bounced harmlessly. He looked at Arthur Drake, who was sitting opposite him, furiously typing on a tablet. "Fix this, Arthur. Get the freeze lifted. I have a board meeting on Monday. If the shareholders find out I can't access my own capital, the stock will tank." "It's not that simple, Nathaniel," Arthur said, looking grim. Judge Harrison didn't just issue a standard freeze. He invoked the Protection of Vulnerable Dependents clause. Because Julianne is pregnant and has no income, and because he witnessed an assault, he has broad discretion. And there's the press. Arthur turned the tablet around. TMZ had already broken the story. The headline screamed, "Billionaire's pregnant wife kicked by mistress in court. Judge is wife's father." There was a video. Someone in the hallway had filmed it. It was grainy, but clear enough. It showed Tiffany laughing. It showed the kick. It showed Julianne clutching her stomach. And it showed Nathaniel checking his watch. The internet is eating you alive, Arthur said bluntly. Boycott Nebula is trending #1 on Twitter. Your brand is built on connecting families, Nathaniel. This destroys that image. I don't care about Twitter, Nathaniel snapped. Get Tiffany out of jail. She's calling me every 5 minutes from the holding cell. About that, Arthur hesitated. Since your assets are frozen, we can't post her bail. It's set at $500,000. The judge considered her a flight risk because she has a French passport. Nathaniel blinked. I can't pay her bail? Not unless you have $500,000 in cash under your mattress. Nathaniel rubbed his temples. Leave her in there for the night. It might teach her not to be so stupid in public. Focus on Julianne. We need to discredit her. If she's the victim, we lose. We need to make her the villain. How? Leak the psychiatric report from 2 years ago, Nathaniel said, his eyes cold. The one from when she had that breakdown after the miscarriage. Nathaniel, that's privileged medical info. If we leak that, and it's traced back to us— Don't trace it back, Nathaniel hissed. Send it to the tabloids anonymously. Paint her as hysterical, unstable. Claim she faked the fall in the hallway. Claim she provoked Tiffany. Just muddy the waters. If people think she's crazy, the sympathy evaporates. Arthur looked at his client with a flicker of distaste, but he nodded. He was paid to win, not to be moral. I'll make a call. 2 days later, the war escalated. Julianne was staying at William's townhouse on the Upper East Side. It was a fortress of solitude, protected by private security William had hired. She was sitting in the garden, trying to read a book, when her phone buzzed. It was a Google alert she hadn't turned off. Crazy ex-wife. Sources say Julianne Bennett has history of mental instability and self-harm. Her hands shook as she opened the article. It detailed a period of depression she had suffered 2 years prior after losing her first pregnancy. It twisted her grief into madness. It claimed she was obsessive and manipulative. It even quoted an anonymous family friend, saying Julianne had trapped Nathaniel with this pregnancy to get a payout. The air left her lungs. The cruelty was surgical. Nathaniel knew exactly where to cut. He was using her deepest trauma as a weapon. Don't read that trash. Jeremiah Stone stepped into the garden. He was a striking man, tall, with skin the color of deep mahogany and a suit that fit like armor. He carried a briefcase that looked heavy. He leaked my medical records, Julianne said, tears streaming down her face. He's telling the world I'm crazy. He's flailing, Jeremiah said calmly, sitting opposite her. This is the move of a desperate man, and he just made a fatal mistake. How? Everyone believes it. Look at the comments. I don't care about the comments. I care about the law, Jeremiah said. By leaking HIPAA-protected records, he has committed a federal offense. We just need to prove he did it, and we will. But first, we have a counter-move. He opened his briefcase and slid a file across the table. What is this? This, Jeremiah smiled, a wolfish grin that made Julianne realize why her father had hired him. Is the financial forensic report on Nebula Stream? Julianne frowned. Nathaniel's business is legitimate. He went public. The software is legitimate, Jeremiah agreed. But the initial funding? The seed money that launched the company 4 years ago? It came from a shell company in the Cayman Islands called Apex Holdings. So, Jeremiah leaned in. Do you know who signed as the director of Apex Holdings? Julianne shook her head. You did. Julianne froze. What? I don't know anything about offshore accounts. Exactly, Jeremiah said. Nathaniel forged your signature. He used your identity, the identity of a nobody waitress with no credit history, to launder $3 million of undocumented money into the US to start his company. He put the risk on you. If the company went down, you would have gone to prison for fraud. He would have been clean. Julianne felt sick. He set me up from the very beginning. He used you as a human shield, Jeremiah confirmed. But here is the beautiful part. Since your name is on the incorporation documents of the parent company, technically, legally, you don't own half of Nebula Stream. Jeremiah tapped the paper. You own all of it. The realization hit Julianne like a physical blow. The man who had kicked her out of her home, the man who was currently trying to paint her as a gold digger, had accidentally built his entire empire on a foundation that belonged to her. What do we do? Julianne asked, her voice trembling, but this time with rage, not fear. We don't settle for $10,000, Jeremiah said, closing the file. We walk into court tomorrow for the emergency hearing, and we fire him. You are the majority shareholder of the holding company. We are going to vote him off his own board. Can we do that? With your father's help and my motion? Jeremiah stood up. We can do anything, but you have to be strong. Tomorrow, you aren't the victim. You're the boss. Just then, Julianne felt a sharp cramp in her abdomen, stronger than before. She grimaced, clutching her side. Julianne? Jeremiah's face lost its confident edge. Are you okay? It's probably just stress, she gasped. Braxton Hicks. But then she felt the dampness. She looked down. A dark stain was spreading on the white cushion of the patio chair. Jeremiah, she whispered, looking up at him with wide, terrified eyes. I'm bleeding. The stress, the fall, the emotional torture. It had been too much. Jeremiah didn't hesitate. He dropped the briefcase and scooped her up into his arms as if she weighed nothing. He shouted toward the house, William, call the ambulance now! As Julianne faded in and out of consciousness, the only thing she could think was, Nathaniel wins. He killed us. He finally killed us. The waiting room of St. Jude's Medical Center was a purgatory of beige walls and old magazines. But for William Harrison, it felt like a cell. The man who controlled courtrooms with a raised eyebrow was now utterly powerless. He paced the linoleum floor, his footsteps echoing in the empty corridor. Jeremiah Stone sat on a plastic chair, his suit jacket discarded, his elbows on his knees. He was staring at the floor, his usual confident demeanor replaced by a somber vigilance. It's been 3 hours, William rasped, checking his watch for the 100th time. Why haven't they come out? Surgery takes time, William, Jeremiah said softly. Complications take time. Julianne is a fighter. You know that. I don't know that, William snapped, his voice cracking. I don't know her anymore. I missed 10 years, Jeremiah. 10 years. And now, the first time I get her back, I might lose her because of that monster. As if summoned by the devil himself, the elevator doors at the end of the hall slid open with a cheerful ding. Flashes of light erupted immediately. A swarm of paparazzi had somehow bypassed security, or more likely, had been tipped off. In the center of the chaos walked Nathaniel Bennett. He was wearing a somber black sweater, carrying a massive bouquet of white lilies. He looked devastated, perfectly, cinematically devastated. Please, please, Nathaniel said to the cameras, his voice catching theatrically. I just want to see my wife. I am praying for her and our unborn child. Please give us a privacy. He walked toward the waiting area, looking like the picture of a grieving husband. William stopped pacing. He turned slowly toward the elevator. The transformation was terrifying. The worried father vanished. The executioner appeared. Get him out of here. William growled to the 2 private security guards standing by the ICU doors. "William," Nathaniel called out, holding up the flowers. "I came as soon as I heard." "How is she?" "The doctors won't tell me anything because of the restraining order. But surely in a life-or-death situation, family comes first." William walked up to him. He didn't yell. He didn't strike him. He just stepped into Nathaniel's personal space, radiating a cold so intense it seemed to drop the room's temperature. "You have no family here," William said. "You forfeited that title when you leaked her medical files to the press. You stressed her into a placental abruption, Nathaniel. If she dies, it isn't tragedy. It's manslaughter. And I will personally see that you are charged." Nathaniel's eye twitched. He leaned in closer, dropping the volume so the cameras couldn't hear. "Careful, old man. You're emotional. You're making accusations you can't prove. I'm just a worried husband. The public loves a redemption arc. If you block me from seeing her, you look like the vindictive father keeping true love apart." "True love?" Jeremiah Stone stepped up beside William. He towered over Nathaniel. "You signed a DNR. Do not resuscitate. Order for Julianne 3 months ago without her knowledge, buried in a stack of insurance papers. We found it in the file review an hour ago. You were betting on her dying during childbirth, weren't you?" Nathaniel's face went slack. The color drained away. That was standard procedure for the life insurance policy. "It was a bet against her life," Jeremiah said. "Security. Remove Mr. Bennett from the premises. If he resists, break his arm. I'll represent you pro bono." The guards moved in. Nathaniel dropped the flowers. "You can't do this. I have rights. That's my child in there." "Get out!" William roared, finally losing his composure. As Nathaniel was dragged back to the elevators, cursing and threatening lawsuits, the double doors of the surgery wing swung open. Dr. Aris Thorne, the chief of surgery, stepped out. She looked exhausted. Her surgical scrubs were stained. She pulled down her mask. William rushed to her. "Julianne, is she?" "She's alive," Dr. Thorne said. William let out a breath that sounded like a sob. He grabbed Jeremiah's shoulder to steady himself. "But it was close," the doctor continued gravely. "She lost a lot of blood. The abruption was severe. We had to perform an emergency hysterectomy to stop the bleeding. She will never be able to carry children again. She is currently in a medically induced coma to let her body heal. The next 24 hours are critical." "And the baby?" William asked, terrified of the answer. Dr. Thorne smiled tiredly. "He's a fighter, just like his mother. 3 pounds, 4 ounces. He's in the NICU. His lungs are undeveloped, so he's on a ventilator. But his vitals are strong. He's gripping the nurse's finger right now." William wept. He didn't care who saw. He covered his face with his hands and wept for the daughter he almost lost and the grandson he had yet to meet. Jeremiah placed a hand on his friend's back. "Go see him, William. Go see your grandson. I'll stay here with Julianne." William nodded, wiping his eyes with a handkerchief. "Nathaniel doesn't get near them. Not the boy, not Jules." "I'll sit outside her door myself," Jeremiah promised. As William walked toward the NICU, Jeremiah took out his phone. He dialed his firm's forensic accounting team. "It's Stone," he said into the phone, his voice hard as flint. "Accelerate the timeline. I don't want to wait for next week. We take Nebula Stream tomorrow morning. I want Nathaniel Bennett to lose everything before Julianne wakes up." The headquarters of Nebula Stream was a glass monolith in downtown Manhattan, a testament to Nathaniel Bennett's ego. The boardroom on the 40th floor offered a panoramic view of the city, a view that usually made Nathaniel feel like a god. Today, however, the mood was funeral. The board of directors sat around the long oval table. 12 men and women in expensive suits, looking at their tablets with furrowed brows. The stock had dropped 15% since the courthouse incident. The hashtag "Lock a monster in a suit" was trending globally. Advertisers were pulling out. Nathaniel stood at the head of the table, projecting an image of calm he didn't feel. "Ladies and gentlemen, please," Nathaniel said, using his best TED Talk voice. "This is a temporary PR turbulence. My personal life is being weaponized by a vindictive ex-wife and her estranged father, who happens to be a judge abusing his power. We are filing countersuits. The product is solid. The numbers are solid." "The numbers are tanking, Nathaniel," said George Abernathy, a senior board member. "We have investors screaming. They don't want a CEO who kicks pregnant women. They want a resignation." "I didn't kick anyone." Nathaniel slammed his hand on the table. "That was Tiffany, and I have already severed ties with her. I am the victim here." "You are a liability," Abernathy shot back. "We are discussing a vote of no confidence." "You can't," Nathaniel sneered. "I own 30% of the voting shares. The founders' clause protects me. You can't remove me without a 75% supermajority, and my allies on this board won't turn on me." He looked pointedly at 3 younger members he had personally enriched. They looked away, uncomfortable. The heavy glass doors of the boardroom swung open. "Actually," a deep voice boomed from the entrance, "the math is a little different than you think." Heads turned. Jeremiah Stone walked in, looking like a grim reaper in a charcoal suit. Behind him walked a young associate carrying a box of files, and surprisingly, 2 uniformed police officers who stayed by the door. "Who let you in?" Nathaniel shouted. "Security! Get this man out!" "I let myself in," Jeremiah said, walking calmly to the other end of the table. "As the legal representative for the majority shareholder, I have a right to be here." "Majority shareholder?" Nathaniel laughed nervously. "I am the majority shareholder, and I don't have a representative named Stone." Jeremiah placed a single, thin file on the table. He didn't sit. He stood, commanding the room. "Mr. Abernathy," Jeremiah nodded to the senior member. "You are the chairman of the audit committee, correct?" "I am," Abernathy said, eyeing the lawyer curiously. "I have here the original incorporation documents for Nebula Stream's parent entity, Apex Holdings," Jeremiah said. "As you know, Apex holds the controlling 51% interest in Nebula Stream." "We know that," Nathaniel interrupted. "Apex is my private holding company." "Is it?" Jeremiah opened the file. "Because according to the Cayman Islands Registry, and the original bank mandates used to fund this company, the sole director and beneficiary of Apex Holdings is one, Julianne Harrison." The room went silent. Nathaniel's face turned the color of ash. That's a clerical error. That's my wife. I handled the paperwork. It's my money." "It's her signature," Jeremiah corrected. "Or rather, a signature purporting to be hers. We ran a forensic handwriting analysis. It's a forgery. A clumsy one." Jeremiah turned to the board. "Here is the situation. Mr. Bennett used his wife's identity to launder the seed money for this company to avoid liability. He put the company in her name legally. He thought she was too uneducated to find out. He thought he could discard her and keep the assets. But legally, Julianne Harrison owns Apex. Therefore, Julianne Harrison owns Nebula Stream." "That's a lie!" Nathaniel screamed, lunging across the table. "I built this. Me!" "Sit down, boy," Abernathy barked at Nathaniel. He looked at Jeremiah. "Mr. Stone, if this is true—" "It is," Jeremiah said. "And as Miss Harrison's proxy, acting under power of attorney while she fights for her life in the ICU due to the stress caused by Mr. Bennett, I am calling for an immediate vote." Jeremiah looked Nathaniel dead in the eye. Motion to terminate Nathaniel Bennett as CEO, effective immediately, for cause. Specifically, fraud, embezzlement, and moral turpitude. Seconded, Abernathy said without hesitation. All in favor? Jeremiah asked. Every hand in the room went up, even Nathaniel's allies. They weren't going down with the ship. You can't do this to me, Nathaniel was hyperventilating. I have money. I have lawyers. You have nothing, Jeremiah said coldly. We have frozen the company accounts. Your personal accounts are frozen by Judge Harrison. And those officers at the door? Everyone looked at the police. They aren't here for security, Jeremiah said. They are here to execute an arrest warrant. Arrest? Nathaniel squeaked. For forgery, identity theft, and wire fraud, Jeremiah listed. Oh, and the district attorney added a charge this morning. Conspiracy to commit assault. What? Tiffany St. Clair made a deal. Jeremiah dropped the final bomb. She didn't like spending the night in jail. She told the DA everything. She told them you instructed her to intimidate Julianne. She told them you laughed about it in the car. She gave them the text messages. Nathaniel staggered back, hitting the window. He looked down at the city he thought he owned. It was a long way down. The officers moved in. Nathaniel Bennett, you are under arrest. You have the right to remain silent. As they handcuffed him, dragging him out of his own boardroom, Nathaniel looked at Jeremiah. She won't win. She's weak. She survived you, Jeremiah said, closing his briefcase. That makes her the strongest person I know. As the door closed on Nathaniel's screaming figure, Jeremiah turned to the stunned board. Now, he said, smoothing his tie, let's talk about rebranding. I think the name Phoenix Systems has a nice ring to it, rising from the ashes and all that. The sentencing hearing took place 6 months later. The courtroom was packed, but this time the atmosphere was different. There was no mockery, no snickering. There was only a heavy, expectant silence. Nathaniel Bennett stood before the bench. The arrogance that had defined him was gone, eroded by months in Rikers Island. His bespoke suit hung loosely on his frame, his hair graying at the temples. He didn't look at the gallery. He couldn't bear to see the 2 people sitting in the front row. Julianne sat with her head held high. She wore a sharp, tailored white suit, the color of new beginnings. In her arms, sleeping soundly in a blue carrier, was baby Leo William. He was small, a survivor of the trauma that had birthed him, but he was healthy. Next to her sat William Harrison. He wasn't wearing his robe. He was there simply as a father and grandfather. He held Julianne's hand, a silent anchor of support. Judge Patricia Thorne, the Ice Queen, adjusted her glasses and looked down at Nathaniel. Mr. Bennett, she began, her voice cutting through the room. You treated people as assets to be acquired or liabilities to be liquidated. You forged documents, you stole identities, and you orchestrated a campaign of terror against a pregnant woman. You thought you were untouchable. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. This court finds you guilty on all counts. For the fraud, the embezzlement, and the conspiracy to commit assault, you are sentenced to 15 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole for the first 10. You're also ordered to pay restitution of $5 million to the victim, Ms. Julianne Harrison. The gavel banged. It was the sound of a final door closing on Nathaniel's life. As the marshals led him away, he looked back just once. He met Julianne's eyes. He saw no fear there, only pity. Tiffany St. Clair had already pleaded out, receiving 3 years of probation and community service. But her social life was over. The internet never forgets, and she was a pariah in every circle that mattered. 1 year later, The sun filtered through the leaves of the Central Park trees. Julianne sat on a picnic blanket, watching Leo wobble on his chubby legs as he tried to chase a pigeon. He laughed, a pure, joyous sound that healed the remaining cracks in Julianne's heart. "He's fast," William huffed, jogging over with 2 ice cream cones. He handed one to Julianne. "He's going to be a track star." "He's going to be a lawyer," Julianne smiled, taking the cone. "He's already very argumentative when he doesn't want to nap." William chuckled, sitting down beside her. "How was the board meeting?" "Good," Julianne said. "We officially rebranded today. Phoenix Systems. The stock is up 20%. We also launched the Bennett Harrison Foundation. It provides legal aid and housing for women escaping financial abuse. Jeremiah is heading the legal team." "I'm proud of you, Jules," William said, his voice thick with emotion. "Not because of the company, but because you survived. You walked through the fire." Julianne looked at her father, then at her son. She thought about the terrified woman in the thrift store dress 6 months ago. That woman was gone. "I didn't just walk through it, Dad," she said softly, watching Leo fall and get right back up. "I learned how to burn brighter." And that is the story of how a cruel millionaire learned that the nobody he discarded was actually the daughter of the law itself. It's a reminder that arrogance is a brittle shield, and that family, true family, will always stand by you when the world walks out. Nathaniel thought power came from money, but Julianne proved that real power comes from resilience and truth. What did you think of Julianne's revenge? Did Nathaniel get what he deserved, or was 15 years too short? If you enjoyed this story of karma and justice, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Comment justice below if you think Julianne is a hero. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.